Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepless Scientist. Tonight we're stepping into one of Earth's most mysterious kingdoms, the realm of fungi. These quiet organisms live mostly out of sight, beneath our feet and inside the wood of fallen trees, connecting forests in ways we're only beginning to understand. They are neither plant nor animal, but something else entirely. Ancient, essential, and endlessly surprising. We'll wander through their hidden networks, discover their strange beauty, and explore how they sustain the world in ways both visible and invisible. So settle in, let your thoughts drift downward into the soil, and join me on this gentle journey through the fungal kingdom. And just before we begin, if these calm, curious explorations help you unwind or give you a quiet way to end your day, consider liking and subscribing to the channel. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. The secret kingdom beneath our feet. Imagine walking through a forest. You see trees reaching towards sunlight, ferns unfurling in shadow, moss carpeting stones. But beneath your feet, hidden in darkness, stretches another world entirely. A vast network of thread-like filaments weaves through the soil, connecting tree roots, breaking down fallen leaves, and shuttling nutrients across distances you'd need a map to comprehend. This is the kingdom of fungi, and it exists mostly where we cannot see it, what we call mushrooms. The colorful caps and stems that emerge after rain are only the fruiting bodies, the visible tips of a much larger organism. The real fungus lives underground, sprawling through soil and wood in an architecture so complex it resembles neural networks or city infrastructure. Fungi are older than forests, more diverse than you might imagine, and absolutely essential to life as we know it. They are the recyclers, the connectors, the bridge between death and new life. And tonight, we'll explore their quiet, essential work. The secret kingdom has always been here, beneath our feet, waiting to be understood. What exactly is a mushroom? Here's the thing about mushrooms. They're not the organism itself. They're more like fruit on a tree. The mushroom you see pushing up through leaf litter or growing on a rotting log is the reproductive structure of a much larger fungal body living hidden in the substrate. Its job is simple: produce and release spores, the microscopic seeds that will drift away and start new fungal colonies elsewhere. The actual organism, the living fungus, exists as mycelium, a network of thin threads called hyphae that spread through soil, wood, or whatever material the fungus feeds on. This mycelium can be enormous, stretching across acres, living for years or even centuries. The mushroom appears only when conditions are right: enough moisture, the right temperature, sufficient nutrients. It grows quickly, sometimes overnight, releases its spores, and then withers away. The mycelium remains, patient and persistent, waiting for the next opportunity to fruit. So when you see a mushroom, you're witnessing only a brief, visible moment in the life of a much larger, mostly invisible organism. The mushroom is the message, but the mycelium is the messenger. The hidden world of fungi. Fungi occupy their own kingdom of life, separate from plants, animals, bacteria, and all other living things. This classification recognizes something fundamental. Fungi are genuinely different. They don't photosynthesize like plants. They don't hunt or move like animals. Instead, they secrete enzymes into their surroundings, breaking down organic matter externally, then absorbing the resulting nutrients. It's a form of eating that happens outside the body. This ability makes them extraordinary decomposers, capable of breaking down some of the toughest materials on Earth: lignin in wood, keratin in hair and nails, even certain plastics and petroleum products. The fungal kingdom is vast and varied. It includes the mushrooms you see in forests, the yeasts that make bread rise and beer ferment, the molds that grow on forgotten food, and microscopic species you've never noticed. Scientists estimate there are between 2 and 4 million fungal species on Earth, though only about 150,000 have been formally described. The hidden world of fungi is mostly still hidden, even from science. Every forest soil sample, Every rotting log likely contains species no one has ever named or studied. The kingdom is ancient, diverse, and largely mysterious. The oldest living kingdom on Earth. Fungi are ancient beyond easy comprehension. They appeared on Earth roughly 1 billion years ago, long before plants colonized land. In fact, fungi may have helped plants make that monumental transition from water to land. Early plant ancestors likely formed partnerships with fungi, the fungal networks helping primitive roots absorb water and nutrients from barren rock and soil. Fossil evidence shows fungi were already established and diverse by the time the first forests appeared. Some researchers believe fungi might have been among the first complex life forms to venture onto land, paving the way for everything that followed. The oldest living individual organism on Earth is likely a fungus, the honey fungus in Oregon's Blue Mountains, which we'll explore more later, is estimated to be thousands of years old. But beyond individual age, the fungal lineage itself stretches back through deep time. These organisms have survived every mass extinction, adapted to every climate, and colonized every continent. They were here long before us, and they'll likely persist long after. The quiet kingdom beneath our feet is also the ancient kingdom, carrying secrets from Earth's distant past. The difference between plants and fungi. It's easy to mistake fungi for plants. They grow from the ground. They seem rooted in place, and many are green with algae growing on them. But fungi are fundamentally different. Plants are autotrophs. They make their own food through photosynthesis, using sunlight, carbon dioxide, and water to create sugars. Fungi are heterotrophs. They must consume organic matter created by other organisms. In this way, they're actually more similar to animals than plants. Their cell walls are made of chitin, the same material in insect exoskeletons, rather than cellulose like plants. They store energy as glycogen, like animals, rather than starch. Genetically, fungi are more closely related to animals than to plants, a fact that surprises many people. Fungi also reproduce differently, releasing spores rather than seeds. And these spores are incredibly resilient, capable of lying dormant for years until conditions favor growth. Where plants reach toward light, fungi reach toward food, organic matter to decompose. They don't compete with plants for sunlight. They work in shadow and soil, processing what plants leave behind. Understanding that fungi are not plants opens the door to understanding what they actually are, a kingdom unto themselves. The true body of a mushroom. The true body of what we call a mushroom is the mycelium, and it exists mostly out of sight. Picture a network of fine white threads, each one thinner than a human hair, branching and rebranching through soil or wood. These threads are hyphae, and collectively, they form the mycelium, the actual living fungus. A single cubic inch of soil might contain miles of these microscopic filaments. They grow by extending at their tips, secreting enzymes that break down organic matter, then absorbing the nutrients released. This growth is exploratory, reaching through the substrate in search of food. When different hyphae meet, they can fuse together, sharing nutrients and information across the network. The mycelium can be remarkably long-lived, while mushrooms appear and disappear within days or weeks. The mycelium persists through seasons, sometimes through centuries. It waits patiently underground, spreading slowly, breaking down nutrients, forming partnerships with plant roots. Only when conditions align, moisture, temperature, available nutrients, does it gather resources to produce a mushroom, the temporary fruiting body that will spread spores and potentially create new mycelial networks elsewhere. The mycelium is the organism. The mushroom is just its moment of reproduction. The underground network, called mycelium, creates what might be the most extensive biological networks on Earth. In a healthy forest, mycelium from countless fungal species weaves through the soil in overlapping, interconnected layers. Some networks specialize in decomposition, breaking down leaf litter and fallen branches. Others form symbiotic relationships with living tree roots. Still others parasitize insects or other fungi. These networks are not chaotic. They show organization, purpose, even something that resembles intelligence. Mycelium grows toward food sources and away from toxins. It can bridge gaps, road around obstacles, and distribute nutrients efficiently across distances. In laboratory experiments, slime molds, which despite the name, are sometimes fungus-like, have recreated efficient versions of Tokyo's rail system when food sources were placed in positions matching the city's layout. While true fungi are different from slime molds, both demonstrate how decentralized networks can solve complex problems without centralized control. The mycelial network responds to its environment dynamically, sensing chemical gradients, moisture levels, and nutrient availability. It's a living architecture that connects the forest from below, sustaining life through constant chemical conversation. To understand a forest, you must understand the mycelium beneath it. The Internet of the Forest. Scientists sometimes call it the Wood Wide Web, the vast underground network through which trees communicate and share resources via fungal connections. This network is built on mycorrhizal relationships, partnerships between fungi and plant roots. The fungal hyphae extend the effective reach of roots, accessing water and nutrients the roots alone couldn't reach. In exchange, the fungi receive sugars the tree produces through photosynthesis. But the network does more than simple exchange. Research has shown that trees can transfer carbon to other trees through fungal networks, sometimes supporting neighbors during periods of stress. A large, well-lit tree might share resources with smaller, shaded saplings through the mycelial network. When a tree is attacked by insects, it can release chemical signals through the fungal network, alerting neighboring trees to mount defenses. The network even seems to prioritize kin. Some studies suggest parent trees preferentially support their own offspring through fungal connections. This challenges our image of forests as collections of individual trees competing for light and space. Instead, forests emerge as communities, interconnected and cooperative, with fungi serving as the communication infrastructure. The mycelium is not just feeding trees, it's connecting them, creating a living network that functions almost like a distributed nervous system. How trees talk through fungi. The conversation happens chemically, in a language of molecules traveling through fungal hyphae. When a tree's leaves are attacked by caterpillars, the tree produces defensive compounds, but it also sends signals through its roots into the mycorrhizal network, chemical messages that travel through fungal hyphae to neighboring trees. Those neighbors, receiving the warning, begin producing defensive compounds before the caterpillars even arrive. This chemical communication system allows forests to respond collectively to threats. The messages aren't limited to danger warnings. Trees share carbon through the network, particularly from older, established trees to younger saplings struggling in deep shade. This sharing is selective and dynamic, changing based on season, tree health, and kinship. Some researchers believe the fungal network also carries information about water availability and nutrient locations. The fungi, meanwhile, aren't passive cables. They're active participants, controlling flow through the network and taking their share of resources. It's not altruism, but mutualism, a system where all parties benefit from cooperation. The Wood Wide Web represents something profound, the recognition that forests think, after a fashion, not with neurons, but with chemical signals flowing through living networks of fungi and roots, creating coordinated responses that increase survival for the whole community. The silent exchange of nutrients. The exchange between fungi and plants happens at microscopic meeting points, where fungal hyphae wrap around or even penetrate root cells. At these sites, nutrients flow in both directions. The fungus delivers phosphorus, nitrogen, and water absorbed from soil the roots cannot reach. The plant delivers carbon in the form of sugars, manufactured through photosynthesis from sunlight and air. This trade is ancient, dating back roughly 400 million years to when plants first colonized land. Without fungal partners, those early plants likely couldn't have survived the transition from water to terrestrial environments. The fungal networks acted as surrogate root systems, vastly extending the reach of primitive roots. Today, an estimated 90% of land plants maintain mycorrhizal relationships. The exchange is so fundamental that many plants cannot thrive without their fungal partners. The fungi, in turn, depend on plant-produced sugars they cannot photosynthesize and need this carbon source. It's a partnership born of mutual need, refined over hundreds of millions of years into one of nature's most successful collaborations. This silent exchange, invisible to the eye, powers much of life on land. The green world above ground depends entirely on the fungal networks below, the mycorrhizal connection. Mycorrhiza, from Greek words meaning fungus root, describes this intimate partnership. There are different types. Ectomycorrhizal fungi form sheaths around root tips without penetrating root cells, common in forests with pines, oaks, and birches. Endomycorrhizal fungi, also called arbuscular mycorrhizal fungi, actually penetrate root cell walls, forming tree-like structures called arbuscules inside the cells where nutrient exchange occurs. These are more common in agricultural plants, grasses, and many flowers. Each type of partnership has co-evolved with specific plant families, creating specialized relationships. The fungus recognizes its plant partner through chemical signals, and the plant allocates carbon specifically to feed its fungal allies. When this relationship is disrupted through tilling soil, applying fungicides, or removing forests, plant health often declines dramatically. The plants lose access to the expanded root network the fungi provided. Restoration ecology increasingly focuses on rebuilding these mycorrhizal connections, inoculating degraded soil with appropriate fungal species to help ecosystems recover. The mycorrhizal connection isn't optional for most terrestrial ecosystems. It's foundational. Remove the fungi, and forests struggle, restore them, and ecosystems heal. The partnership between plants and fungi literally roots the living world together. The cycle of life and decay. Fungi are the great recyclers, the organisms that close the loop between death and new life. When a tree falls, when a leaf drops, when an animal dies, fungi begin the work of decomposition. They secrete enzymes that break down complex organic molecules, cellulose, lignin, proteins, into simpler compounds that can be absorbed and eventually reused by plants. Without fungi, dead organic matter would simply accumulate. Forests would be buried under centuries of unrotted leaves and fallen trunks. Nutrients would remain locked in the bodies of the dead, unavailable to the living. Fungi solve this problem. They can break down materials that few other organisms can touch, particularly lignin, the tough polymer that gives wood its strength. This ability makes fungi indispensable to the carbon cycle, releasing carbon from dead tissue back into ecosystems, where it can be used again. Decomposition isn't destruction, it's transformation. The atoms that once formed a tree will, through fungal action, eventually form soil, feed microbes, nourish roots, and perhaps become part of a new tree. Fungi facilitate this transformation, ensuring that death feeds life. They are the bridge in the endless cycle, the force that prevents endings from being final. In decay, they create possibility. The role of fungi in decomposition. Picture a fallen log in a forest, slowly sinking into the earth over years. This transformation is primarily the work of fungi. The process begins when fungal spores land on the wood. If conditions are right, they germinate, sending hyphae into the wood's structure. The fungi secrete enzymes, cellulases, ligninases, that break down the wood's tough cell walls. Slowly the wood softens, darkens, and crumbles. What was once a solid trunk becomes a soft, spongy habitat for insects, salamanders, and seedlings. The fungi extract nutrients for their own growth, but the byproducts of decomposition enrich the surrounding soil. Eventually, the log collapses entirely, its substance dispersed into the forest floor, where it feeds new life. Different fungi specialize in different stages of decay. Pioneer species colonize fresh wood, breaking down simple compounds. Later, specialist fungi that can digest lignin take over, dismantling the toughest structures. This succession of fungal species ensures complete decomposition over time. The process can take decades for a large tree, but the fungi are patient. They work in darkness and dampness, transforming what was once living wood into the rich humus that defines healthy forest soil. Decomposition is their artistry, and they are masters of it. How mushrooms recycle the earth. Every year, forests produce enormous quantities of organic matter. Fallen leaves, dead branches, the bodies of insects and animals. Without decomposition, this material would pile up indefinitely. Fungi, more than any other organism, prevent this. They are the planet's primary decomposers, breaking down organic material and releasing nutrients back into ecosystems. This work happens mostly invisibly, through mycelium threading through soil and wood. But mushrooms, the visible fruiting bodies, are part of this cycle too. As mushrooms grow and then decay, they concentrate nutrients. Their tissues are rich in nitrogen and other elements, and when they decompose in turn, they release these nutrients in forms plants can readily absorb. Some animals eat mushrooms, transferring nutrients up the food chain. Spores, spreading on the wind, carry fungi to new material that needs breaking down. This recycling happens everywhere, in every ecosystem, in forests and grasslands, in deserts, where rare rains trigger mushroom blooms, even in your backyard. Fungi are why autumn leaves don't accumulate forever. They're why fallen trees eventually disappear. They maintain the flow of nutrients through ecosystems, ensuring nothing is truly wasted. In their quiet, essential work, fungi recycle the earth itself over and over, endlessly transforming death into the raw material of new life. The fruiting of the mycelium. For most of its life, a fungus exists only as mycelium, hidden and patient. But when conditions align, usually after rain, when temperature and moisture are just right, something remarkable happens. The mycelium gathers its resources and produces a fruiting body, a mushroom. This process is complex and still not fully understood. The mycelium must coordinate the growth of millions of cells, organizing them into the structure we recognize as a mushroom. Within hours or days, a cap and stem push up through soil or emerge from wood. The speed can be astonishing. Some mushrooms grow several inches in a single night. This rapid growth is possible because the mycelium has already accumulated the necessary energy and nutrients over weeks or months. The mushroom is essentially pre-built underground, then inflated rapidly with water, like an umbrella opening. Once the mushroom emerges, its sole purpose is reproduction. Cells beneath the cap form spores, millions or even billions of them, each capable of starting a new fungal colony. When the spores mature, the mushroom releases them. After that, the mushroom's work is done. It withers, decomposing back into the soil, while the mycelium remains below, ready to fruit again when conditions return. The mushroom is a brief flowering, a moment of visibility in an otherwise hidden life. How a mushroom grows overnight. The sudden appearance of mushrooms after rain has an almost magical quality. Where yesterday there was bare ground, today there are mushrooms, fully formed. The secret is in the preparation. Long before the mushroom appears, the mycelium has been growing, spreading through the substrate, accumulating nutrients. When environmental triggers occur, moisture from rain, a drop in temperature, changes in light, the mycelium responds by forming a primordium, a tiny knot of densely packed hyphae that will become the mushroom. This primordium may wait for days or weeks, slowly organizing its structure. When conditions are finally right, the mushroom grows through cell expansion rather than cell division. The cells are already there, packed tightly in the primordium. They simply inflate with water, causing the mushroom to expand rapidly. This is why mushrooms feel so watery when you cut them. They're mostly water held within fungal cells. A large mushroom can emerge in just a few hours through this process. It's not growth in the traditional sense. It's more like inflating a balloon that was already shaped. The mycelium has done the real work over weeks or months, storing energy and building cellular structure. The overnight appearance is just the final visible act of a much longer hidden preparation. The beauty of spore release. Beneath the cap of many mushrooms, hanging like delicate curtains, are gills, thin sheets of tissue arranged radially. On the surface of these gills, specialized cells called basidia form spores, the reproductive units that will carry the fungus's genetic material to new locations. When conditions are right, the mature spores are released. Some mushrooms drop their spores. Gravity pulls them down from the gills into air currents below the cap. Others actively eject spores, launching them away from the gill surface with tiny bursts of force generated by water droplet formation. For a brief period, usually lasting a day or two, a single mushroom releases millions of spores. If you place a mushroom cap on white paper and leave it overnight, you'll find a spore print in the morning, a delicate, often beautiful pattern, showing exactly where each gill released its invisible cargo. Spore color varies by species: white, brown, purple, black. Each tiny spore carries the complete genetic information to start a new mycelium, but the odds against any individual spore succeeding are astronomical. This is why mushrooms produce such enormous numbers. Most spores land in places where they cannot grow, but a few will find suitable substrate, germinate, and begin the cycle anew. The invisible rain of spores. Right now, invisible to your eyes, fungal spores are drifting through the air around you, billions upon billions of them, released from mushrooms in forests, fields, and gardens, carried on wind currents across continents and oceans. A single large mushroom can release 1 trillion spores during its brief life. Multiply that by the countless mushrooms fruiting across the world, and you begin to grasp the scale of this invisible rain. Spores are everywhere. They settle on your skin, your clothes, your food. They're in every breath you take. Most are harmless, simply passing through your life without effect. Some will land in places where they can germinate: a rotting log, a pile of leaves, moist soil, and begin growing into new mycelium. The sheer abundance of spores ensures that fungi can colonize new habitats quickly. A dead tree in your yard will likely have fungal spores landing on it within hours of falling. This constant dispersal is how fungi maintain their global presence. They are, in a sense, always raining down on the world, waiting for the right conditions to take root. The air itself is a medium for fungal reproduction, a carrier of invisible potential, connecting all places through this endless drift of microscopic spores. The vastness of underground life. Beneath every footstep in a forest, underground life sprawls in complexity that dwarfs what you see above ground. The mycelial networks of countless fungal species interweave with plant roots, bacterial colonies, and microscopic organisms in a dense living tapestry. In a single handful of healthy forest soil, there might be more living organisms than humans on Earth. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, nematodes, all engaged in constant chemical conversation. The fungal component of this underground ecosystem is staggering. Mycelium can account for a significant percentage of soil biomass, and in some ecosystems, fungal biomass underground exceeds all other living tissue, plant and animal combined. These networks extend far beyond what we can easily observe or measure. They connect individual trees across entire forests, link different plant species, and create superhighways for nutrient transport. The vastness isn't just physical, but also temporal. Some mycelial networks have persisted for hundreds or thousands of years, growing continuously, adapting to changing conditions, surviving droughts, fires, and human interference. This underground realm operates on different timescales than the visible world, slower but more persistent. When you walk through a forest, remember most of the life is beneath you. vast and ancient, quietly sustaining everything you see above. The world's largest living organism. In Oregon's Blue Mountains, spreading through the soil of Malheur National Forest, lives what may be the largest single organism on Earth. It's a honey fungus, Armillaria solitipes, and it covers approximately 2,400 acres, roughly equivalent to 1,600 football fields. The entire network is a single genetic individual, one vast mycelium that has been growing for thousands of years. Scientists estimate it may be between 2,000 and 8,000 years old, making it not only the largest, but possibly one of the oldest living organisms. You wouldn't know it to look at the forest. The fungus lives mostly underground, occasionally producing clusters of honey-colored mushrooms from its vast subterranean network. It spreads slowly, extending through soil by about 3 feet per year, feeding on tree roots and woody debris. The discovery of this enormous organism challenged traditional notions of what an individual organism is. We think of organisms as discrete beings with clear boundaries, but this fungus has no center, no single point from which it grows. It's a network, distributed across the landscape, each part connected to the whole, and it's not alone. Other massive fungal organisms have been discovered in Michigan and elsewhere. The largest life forms on Earth are mostly hidden beneath our feet. The enormous honey fungus of Oregon. The Oregon honey fungus isn't just large. It's a reminder of how differently fungi experience life compared to plants and animals. This organism doesn't have a brain, yet it navigates its environment successfully, finding food, avoiding unsuitable areas, and persisting through millennia. It spreads through the forest by extending rhizomorphs, thick, root-like structures that can grow through soil and even through the air in wet conditions. When these rhizomorphs encounter a tree root, they penetrate it, extracting nutrients and sometimes killing the tree. This parasitic behavior makes honey fungus a concern for foresters, but it's also part of forest ecology, creating gaps where new growth can emerge. What's remarkable is the continuity. Every part of this vast network is connected, sharing nutrients and possibly information about the environment. If one section encounters rich resources, those resources can be distributed across the network. The organism functions as a unified whole, despite lacking centralized control. This distributed intelligence, encoded in chemical gradients and nutrient flow, allows the fungus to persist through changes that would kill more centralized organisms. The Oregon honey fungus isn't just big, it's ancient, resilient, and fundamentally different from the forms of life we typically imagine. It expands our understanding of what life can be. The many shapes of mushrooms. When most people picture a mushroom, they see a simple shape, a cap on a stem, perhaps with gills underneath. But the fungal kingdom produces forms far more diverse. There are shelf fungi that grow like brackets, jutting from tree trunks, layer upon layer of woody tissue, puffballs that look like white spheres, releasing clouds of spores when disturbed, coral fungi that branch like underwater formations, delicate and colorful, earth stars that open like flowers, their outer layers peeling back to reveal the spore sac within, bird's nest fungi that resemble tiny nests, complete with egg-like structures containing spores, stinkhorns that emerge as foul-smelling, phallic structures designed to attract flies that will disperse their spores, jelly fungi that wobble and shine, translucent and strange. Each shape reflects an evolutionary strategy for spore dispersal. Cap and stem mushrooms rely on air currents beneath the cap. Puffballs depend on physical disturbance, raindrops, animals, to puff out spores. Stinkhorns use smell to attract insects. The diversity of forms is a testament to fungal evolution's creativity, finding countless solutions to the single problem of spreading spores. Walking through a forest and noticing this diversity transforms how you see the fungal kingdom. They're sculptors, and their medium is their own living tissue. From caps to puffballs and corals, the shape a mushroom takes is intimately connected to how it disperses spores. Traditional cap and stem mushrooms elevate their spore-producing surfaces above the ground, allowing spores to drop and be carried away on air currents. The cap protects the gills or pores underneath from rain while maintaining the humidity they need. Puffballs take a different approach. They enclose spores within a spherical structure. As the puffball matures, its interior tissue breaks down into a mass of dry spores. Eventually, the outer skin develops an opening, and any disturbance, a raindrop, a passing animal, causes spores to puff out in visible clouds. Coral fungi branch upward, maximizing surface area for spore production while maintaining structural elegance. Their form allows spores to be released from multiple angles, increasing dispersal chances. Shelf fungi, living on tree trunks, orient their pore-bearing surfaces downward, regardless of how the trunk is positioned, ensuring spores always drop away from the fungus. This is achieved through geotropism. The fungus senses gravity and adjusts growth accordingly. Each form solves the challenge of reproduction in its own way. Together, they demonstrate that there's no single right answer to the question of how to be a mushroom. Evolution has explored countless possibilities, and forests are galleries displaying them all. The strange beauty of shelf fungi. Shelf fungi, also called bracket fungi or polypores, grow horizontally from trees, like living shelves. Unlike the soft, short-lived mushrooms of the forest floor, many shelf fungi are tough and woody, persisting for years or even decades. They grow in layers, adding new tissue each year, creating patterns you can sometimes read, like tree rings. Their undersides are covered with tiny pores rather than gills, and from these pores, spores fall like fine dust. Some species grow enormous, spanning several feet across. Others form delicate, overlapping clusters. The colors and textures vary dramatically. Some are brown and rough like bark, while others display vivid yellows, oranges, or reds. Artist conch, a large shelf fungus, has a white undersurface that bruises brown when touched, and artists have used it as a canvas for etching detailed drawings. Turkey tail fungus shows concentric zones of color, brown, gray, white, in patterns that resemble wild turkey plumage. These fungi are saprotrophs, or weak parasites, feeding on dead or dying wood. They're essential decomposers in forest ecosystems, breaking down lignin and returning nutrients to the soil. Their strange beauty lies in their durability and form, architectural elements growing from decay, turning death into lasting, layered structures. The colors hidden in the forest. Mushrooms paint the forest floor in unexpected colors. Bright red fly agarics with white spots, looking like they've stepped out of fairy tales. Vibrant purple, Lacaria amethystina, small but striking against brown leaves. Brilliant yellow chanterelles, glowing like scattered gold. Deep blue Lactarius indigo, which even bleeds blue latex when cut. Neon green Mycena, tiny and luminous in the dimness. These colors seem almost too bright for the shadowed understory, yet they serve purposes. Some pigments protect the mushroom from UV radiation or oxidative stress. Others may deter predators. Bright colors in nature often signal toxicity, and many colorful mushrooms are indeed poisonous. Some colors attract specific animals that might help disperse spores. Slugs, beetles, and other invertebrates are drawn to certain mushroom species, consuming them and excreting spores elsewhere. The pigments themselves are often complex chemical compounds. Some have antioxidant properties. Others have antimicrobial effects. Scientists study mushroom pigments for potential medical applications. But beyond function, their simple beauty, a forest floor after rain, dotted with mushrooms in unexpected colors, becomes a temporary gallery. The colors hidden in the forest emerge briefly, transforming the familiar brown and green into something magical and strange. The brilliant reds and blues of toadstools. The term toadstool once distinguished poisonous mushrooms from edible ones. Though it's not a scientific designation, still, Many of the most brilliantly colored mushrooms are toxic, their colors serving as warning signs. The classic red cap, with white spots of Amanita muscaria, contains psychoactive compounds and can cause severe poisoning. Its striking appearance has made it an icon in art and folklore, yet it's decidedly dangerous. The death cap, Amanita phalloides, is less colorful, but far deadlier, responsible for the majority of fatal mushroom poisonings worldwide. Its cap ranges from pale green to yellowish, colors that seem almost innocent. Blue mushrooms, like Lactarius indigo, are edible and prized by foragers, their color coming from azaline compounds. The brilliance of these colors raises questions. In a shadowed forest, whom are these colors warning? The answer likely includes small mammals, birds and insects that might otherwise consume the mushrooms. Over evolutionary time, species that avoided brightly colored mushrooms survived better, creating selective pressure for the mushrooms to maintain or intensify their warning coloration. It's a conversation between species, conducted in wavelengths of light. The brilliance isn't decoration, it's communication, a chemical statement of identity and consequence. The purpose of mushroom pigments. Mushroom colors aren't random. They're the result of pigments that serve multiple functions. Melanins, the same pigments that color human skin and hair, protect mushrooms from UV radiation and oxidative damage. These brown, black, or gray pigments are common in mushrooms growing in exposed locations. Carotenoids, producing yellows, oranges, and reds, are antioxidants that protect cellular structures from damage by reactive oxygen species. Some mushrooms produce betalains, colorful nitrogen-containing pigments also found in beets. Others synthesize unique fungal pigments found nowhere else in nature. These compounds often have antimicrobial or antifungal properties, helping protect the mushroom from competing microorganisms and parasites. Some pigments change color in response to injury or environmental conditions, possibly signaling damage or deterring predators. The deep blue of Lactarius indigo comes from compounds that oxidize to blue when exposed to air. The pigments in some mushrooms have been found to have medicinal properties, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, even potentially anti-cancer effects. Studying mushroom pigments has revealed new chemical compounds and potential pharmaceutical applications. What appears as simple color is actually sophisticated chemistry, layers of function, encoded in molecular structures that reflect light in specific ways, painting the forest in purpose as much as beauty. The glow of bioluminescent fungi. In tropical forests, and occasionally in temperate regions, a few species of mushrooms emit a faint greenish glow at night. This bioluminescence is caused by a chemical reaction similar to that in fireflies. A compound called luciferin reacts with oxygen in the presence of an enzyme called luciferase, releasing energy as light. The glow is subtle, often requiring darkness to see, but in the right conditions, it transforms the forest floor into something otherworldly. The glowing mushrooms look like tiny lanterns scattered among leaves. Some species glow continuously throughout their lives, while others glow only at certain stages or under specific conditions. The purpose of this glow isn't entirely understood, but research suggests it may attract insects. The insects, drawn to the light, brush against the mushroom and pick up spores, which they carry to new locations. This makes the glow a form of advertisement, a beacon in the darkness, drawing unwitting couriers. Not all bioluminescent fungi produce mushrooms that glow. Some species have luminescent mycelium that makes rotting wood glow from within. This foxfire or fairy fire has been known for centuries, mentioned in folklore and literature, though its biological source wasn't understood until relatively recently. The glow of bioluminescent fungi is a reminder that even the quietest kingdoms have their magic. Mushrooms that light the night. Around 70 species of bioluminescent fungi have been identified worldwide, scattered across tropical and subtropical forests. The honey mushroom, Armillaria, Melia produces glowing mycelium that can make rotting logs shine with an eerie green light. The ghost fungus of Australia, Omphallotus nidiformis, glows brightly enough to read by, though you'd need perfect darkness and patience. In Brazilian forests, Neonothopanus gardneri produces small bioluminescent mushrooms that locals call flor de coco coconut flower. These mushrooms glow brightest during the warm, humid nights, when insects are most active, supporting the theory that the light attracts spore dispersers. The glow follows a circadian rhythm, brightest at night, dimmer during day, suggesting the fungus regulates the light production actively rather than producing it constantly. This implies the glow costs energy and serves a purpose rather than being a mere byproduct of metabolism. Standing in a dark forest where bioluminescent fungi grow creates an experience outside normal human perception. The forest floor sparkles with soft green lights, like stars fallen to earth. It's easy to understand why these mushrooms feature in folklore as fairy lights or spirit guides. The glow is gentle, mysterious, and entirely natural, a reminder that wonder doesn't require magic when biology itself is this strange and beautiful. The science behind the glow. The biochemistry of fungal bioluminescence involves a complex cascade of reactions. The fungus produces luciferin, a light-emitting molecule, through a series of enzymatic steps. When luciferin encounters oxygen in the presence of the enzyme luciferase, it oxidizes, and this oxidation releases energy in the form of visible light, specifically green light with a wavelength around 530 nanometers, near the peak sensitivity of human night vision. The efficiency of this reaction is remarkable. Very little energy is lost as heat, unlike in incandescent light bulbs. The genes responsible for fungal bioluminescence have been identified and studied. Interestingly, they appear to have evolved independently from the bioluminescence systems in other organisms like fireflies or marine bacteria, suggesting that life has discovered this trick multiple times through different chemical pathways. Scientists are now exploring practical applications. The genes for fungal bioluminescence have been inserted into plants, creating glowing tobacco plants and flowers as proof of concept for biolighting. Imagine trees that light pathways naturally, without electricity. The science behind the glow reveals not just how fungi create light, but how understanding nature's solutions can inspire new technologies. The soft green glow of a mushroom contains within it both ancient biology and future possibility. The ancient relationship with humans. Humans and fungi have been intertwined throughout our history. Archaeological evidence suggests humans have eaten mushrooms for thousands of years. The Iceman, a 5,000-year-old mummy found in the Alps, carried amadou fungus, likely for starting fires, and birch polypore, possibly for medicinal purposes. Ancient cultures across the world incorporated mushrooms into their diets, medicines, and spiritual practices. In many traditions, fungi held special significance. They appeared suddenly, seemingly from nowhere, and some produced powerful psychological effects. This mysterious nature made them symbols of transformation, death, and rebirth, the boundary between worlds. The word mushroom itself may derive from the French messeron, though its deeper origins are uncertain. What is certain is that mushrooms have fed us, healed us, poisoned us, and inspired us throughout human history. We've domesticated some species button, mushrooms, shiitake, oyster mushrooms, bringing them into cultivation. We've learned through sometimes tragic experience, which are safe and which are deadly. We've used mushrooms to tan leather, dye fabric, and make paper. The relationship is old, complex, and continuing. As we learn more about fungal biology, we're finding new ways to partner with these ancient organisms for food security, environmental remediation, and sustainable materials. The relationship deepens with understanding. Mushrooms in myth and folklore. Across cultures, mushrooms appear in stories that recognize their strangeness. European folklore speaks of fairy rings, circles of mushrooms marking where fairies dance at night. Step inside a fairy ring. The stories warn, and you might be transported to the fairy realm, or cursed. These rings are actually the expanding edge of underground mycelium, fruiting in a circular pattern as it grows outward from a central point, but the neat circles invited supernatural explanation. In Siberian and Nordic traditions, the fly agaric mushroom was associated with shamanic practices and possibly with the origins of Santa Claus imagery. Flying reindeer, red and white colors, entry through chimneys, echoing the smoke hole of traditional dwellings. Japanese folklore includes mushroom spirits and celebrates matsutake mushrooms as symbols of autumn and impermanence. Chinese tradition has long valued mushrooms for longevity and health, with reishi mushrooms appearing in art as symbols of immortality. Indigenous peoples across the Americas incorporated mushrooms into spiritual ceremonies, using them as tools for healing and vision. These stories reflect mushrooms' real properties, their sudden appearance, their capacity to nourish or poison, their psychoactive effects, filtered through cultural interpretation. The myths aren't just fanciful, they're humanity's attempt to understand organisms that don't fit neat categories, that bridge death and life, earth and sky, the visible and invisible. The sacred fungi of old cultures. In Mesoamerican cultures, certain mushrooms held profound religious significance. The Aztecs called psilocybin mushrooms, teonatacatl, flesh of the gods, and used them in sacred ceremonies to commune with divine forces. Spanish conquistadors, encountering these practices, condemned them as devil worship, driving the traditions underground where they persisted in secret. In Oaxaca, Mexico, traditional mushroom ceremonies continue today, led by curanderas like Maria Sabina, who became famous in the 20th century for sharing these practices with outsiders. The ceremony involves ingesting psilocybin mushrooms in darkness, accompanied by chanting and prayer, creating experiences described as encountering spiritual realms or receiving healing visions. These practices aren't recreational, they're sacramental, treating the mushrooms as sacred medicines or teachers. In Siberia, the fly agaric mushroom played similar roles in shamanic traditions, inducing altered states that practitioners interpreted as communication with spirit worlds. Modern research into psychedelic mushrooms is rediscovering what these cultures always knew. These fungi can produce profound psychological experiences, what science calls neurochemistry. Traditional cultures understood as accessing sacred knowledge. The sacred fungi remind us that mushrooms have power beyond nutrition or toxicity. They can alter consciousness itself, opening doors of perception that usually remain closed. The symbol of rebirth and transformation. Mushrooms emerge from death. They fruit from fallen logs, from the bodies of dead insects, from composted soil, rich with decay. This association made them natural symbols of transformation and rebirth. In alchemy, mushrooms represented the process of transformation from base matter to refined essence. In art and literature, they've symbolized the cycle of life, the beauty that emerges from endings. The mushroom's life cycle mirrors themes of dissolution and renewal. The old fruiting body collapses, but spores disperse to create new life elsewhere. The mycelium feeds on what was, transforming it into what can be. This isn't metaphorical, it's literally what fungi do. They break down the complex molecules of death into simple nutrients that feed new growth. In this way, they embody nature's fundamental truth. Nothing is truly lost, only transformed. Contemporary environmental thinking increasingly recognizes mushrooms as symbols of regeneration and healing. They clean polluted soil, help forests recover from disturbance, and offer sustainable alternatives to petroleum-based materials. The ancient symbol of transformation is being reinterpreted for the Anthropocene. Mushrooms teach us that endings can be beginnings, that death and decay aren't opposite to life, but integral to its continuation. They are nature's alchemists, turning the old into the new, forever. The role of mushrooms in medicine. Fungi have given humanity some of its most important medicines, the discovery of penicillin from the mold. Penicillium, notatum revolutionized medicine, saving countless lives by treating bacterial infections that were once death sentences. But penicillin is just the beginning. Various fungi produce compounds that fight bacteria, viruses, and even cancer. Cyclosporin, derived from a fungus found in Norwegian soil, suppresses the immune system just enough to prevent organ transplant rejection, making modern transplant surgery possible. Statins, which millions take daily to lower cholesterol, were originally discovered in fungi. Fungi produce these compounds not for our benefit, but as chemical warfare against competing organisms in their environment. We've learned to harness them for healing. Beyond pharmaceutical compounds, whole mushrooms have medicinal properties. Reishi, turkey tail, and chaga mushrooms are used in traditional medicine and increasingly studied by modern science for immune-supporting properties. Some show promise in cancer research, not as cures, but as complementary treatments that may enhance immune function. The mycelium of certain mushrooms produces compounds that show antiviral activity. As antibiotic resistance grows increasingly urgent, researchers are looking to fungi for new antimicrobial compounds. The kingdom that recycles death might also hold keys to preventing it. Medicine and mushrooms have always been connected. We're still learning how deep that connection goes. The discovery of penicillin. In 1928, Alexander Fleming returned from vacation to find his laboratory in disarray and a petri dish contaminated with mold. Most scientists would have discarded it. Fleming noticed something odd. Where the mold grew, bacteria didn't. The area around the mold was clear, bacteria-free. This observation led to one of medicine's greatest breakthroughs. The mold was Penicillium notatum, and it produced a substance that killed bacteria. Fleming named it penicillin. It took years of work by other scientists, particularly Howard Florey and Ernst Boris Chain, to purify penicillin and develop methods for mass production. By World War II, penicillin was saving soldiers' lives, preventing deaths from infected wounds that would have been inevitable just years before. The impact was immediate and enormous. Bacterial infections that had killed throughout human history, pneumonia, sepsis, infected wounds, became treatable. Penicillin is estimated to have saved over 200 million lives. The discovery was partly accident, partly prepared mind, noticing what others might have missed. It demonstrated that fungi, often thought of as mere molds and mushrooms, produced powerful chemical compounds with profound effects. This opened the door to antibiotic research and the understanding that microorganisms wage chemical warfare against each other, producing compounds we could use as medicines. One contaminated dish changed history. The healing power of fungal compounds. Fungi are chemical factories, producing an astonishing array of compounds to defend themselves, communicate, and interact with their environment. Many of these compounds have biological activity in human bodies, sometimes profoundly. Beyond antibiotics, fungi produce immunomodulatory compounds that can enhance or suppress immune function, useful in treating autoimmune diseases or supporting immune response to cancer. Polysaccharides from mushrooms, like turkey tail and reishi, interact with immune cells in ways we're still working to understand fully. But evidence suggests they can enhance immune surveillance. Some fungal compounds show anti-inflammatory effects, potentially useful for chronic inflammatory conditions. Others demonstrate antioxidant properties, protecting cells from oxidative damage implicated in aging and disease. Ergot fungi, which grow on rye and other grains, produce compounds that have been both poison and medicine. Ergotism caused outbreaks of convulsive symptoms in medieval Europe, possibly influencing witch trial accusations. But ergot compounds also led to the development of medications for migraines and assisted the discovery of LSD. The line between poison and medicine is often a matter of dose and application. Researchers continue screening fungal species for novel compounds, with millions of fungal species, and only a tiny fraction studied. The healing power of fungal compounds remains largely unexplored. The kingdom holds chemical libraries waiting to be read. The use of mushrooms in modern medicine. Today's medicine cabinet owes more to fungi than most people realize. Beyond penicillin and its descendants, fungal-derived drugs treat diverse conditions. Lovastatin, the first statin drug for lowering cholesterol, came from Aspergillus terreus. Cyclosporine, from Taulopocladium inflatum, enables organ transplants by preventing rejection. Fingolimod, derived from a fungus that infects cicada nymphs, treats multiple sclerosis by preventing immune cells from attacking myelin. Echinocandins, antifungal medications, ironically come from fungi themselves, chemical weapons they evolved to fight competing fungi. The mushroom compounds in modern research extend beyond single molecules to whole mushroom products. Turkey tail mushroom extract is approved in Japan as a complementary cancer treatment. Lion's mane mushroom shows promise in preliminary research for supporting nerve growth and cognitive function. Cordyceps, a parasitic fungus that infects insects, is studied for endurance and energy enhancement. Psilocybin from magic mushrooms is being researched for treatment-resistant depression and end-of-life anxiety, with promising results in clinical trials. These aren't alternative medicines competing with mainstream science. They're potential medicines being investigated through rigorous scientific methods. Modern medicine increasingly recognizes that traditional knowledge about mushrooms may point toward compounds worth studying. Fungi remain a frontier of pharmaceutical research, ancient organisms offering new solutions. How fungi fight bacteria and viruses. Fungi and bacteria are ancient enemies, competing for the same resources in soil, on plant surfaces, and in animal guts. This evolutionary arms race has driven fungi to develop chemical weapons, antibiotics, to kill or inhibit bacterial growth. When we take penicillin or other antibiotics derived from fungi, we're essentially borrowing these weapons for our own battles against bacterial infections. But fungi also produce antiviral compounds, though these are less well known. Some mushroom extracts show activity against flu viruses, herpes viruses, and even HIV in laboratory studies. The mechanisms vary. Some compounds prevent viruses from entering cells, others interfere with viral replication, and some boost immune responses to viral infection. These antiviral effects are generally less dramatic than antibacterial effects, but they're real and increasingly studied. Fungi protect themselves through multiple chemical strategies. Some produce compounds that degrade bacterial cell walls. Others interfere with bacterial metabolism or DNA replication. Some fungal compounds work by stimulating the host's immune system rather than directly attacking pathogens. This immunomodulation might be particularly useful against viruses, which hide inside cells where antibiotics can't reach them. As antibiotic resistance becomes a growing crisis, researchers are returning to fungi, searching for new compounds that bacteria haven't yet developed resistance against. The chemical warfare continues, and we're learning to be better allies to fungi in their ancient battles. The psychedelic fungi and the mind. Certain mushrooms contain psilocybin and psilocin, compounds that profoundly alter consciousness. Psilocybin mushrooms have been used in spiritual and healing contexts for thousands of years, and modern science is rediscovering their potential. When ingested, psilocybin is converted to psilocin, which binds to serotonin receptors in the brain, particularly the 5-HT2A receptor. This binding disrupts normal brain network activity, reducing activity in the default mode network, the brain regions active during self-referential thinking and mind wandering. The result is what users describe as ego dissolution, a temporary loss of the sense of separate self. This can be frightening or liberating, depending on context and mindset. Visual perception changes, colors intensify, patterns emerge, and the boundaries between self and environment feel permeable. Recent clinical research shows that psilocybin-assisted therapy can produce lasting reductions in depression and anxiety, particularly in patients with terminal illness facing existential distress. A single session, carefully guided, can sometimes produce benefits lasting months. The mechanism isn't fully understood, but it may involve psychological insights gained during the experience, combined with neuroplastic changes, the brain forming new connections, while old rigid patterns are temporarily disrupted. Psychedelic fungi don't fit our culture's categories of medicine or drug neatly. They're neither simple pharmacological fixes nor mere recreational intoxicants. They're tools for exploring consciousness itself. The chemistry of psilocybin. Psilocybin is a prodrug, meaning the body metabolizes it into the active compound psilocin. Chemically, both are tryptamines, structurally similar to serotonin, the neurotransmitter that regulates mood, perception, and cognition. This similarity allows psilocin to bind to serotonin receptors throughout the brain, but with different effects than serotonin itself. The primary site of action is the 5-HT2A receptor, concentrated in the prefrontal cortex and other regions involved in cognition and perception. When psilocin binds these receptors, it triggers a cascade of neural effects. Brain imaging studies show that psilocybin decreases activity and connectivity in the default mode network, while increasing connectivity between brain regions that don't normally communicate much. This creates what researchers call a more entropic brain state, less organized, more chaotic, but also more flexible. The subjective experience correlates with these objective measurements. The ego dissolution, the sense of unity with surroundings, and the emotional intensity all map onto specific patterns of brain activity. Psilocybin's effects last 4 to 6 hours, much shorter than LSD, but longer than other tryptamines like DMT. The compound is remarkably non-toxic physically, with no known lethal overdose in humans, though psychological distress during the experience is possible. The chemistry of psilocybin reveals that even profound changes in consciousness have physical molecular bases. Ancient rituals and spiritual journeys. For indigenous cultures that used psilocybin mushrooms, the experience was never casual. The mushrooms were sacraments, treated with reverence, ingested in ceremonial contexts, with intention and preparation. The Mazatec veladas, nighttime healing ceremonies, involved consuming mushrooms in darkness, while a curandera chanted, prayed, and guided participants through their inner journeys. These weren't recreational gatherings, but spiritual and therapeutic events, sought for healing, guidance, or communion with divine forces. Participants prepared through fasting and abstinence. The setting was carefully controlled, quiet, dark, safe, and the intention was clear. This ritual structure created what researchers now call set and setting, the mindset and environment that profoundly influence psychedelic experiences. The mushrooms were understood not as chemicals that altered brain function, but as medicines or teachers that opened doors to sacred knowledge. From the indigenous perspective, the mushrooms had spirits or intelligence of their own, and the experience was a meeting between human consciousness and fungal wisdom. Modern research validates the importance of context. Clinical trials show that the therapeutic environment, the preparation participants receive, and the support during and after the experience significantly affect outcomes. Ancient rituals understood intuitively what science is confirming. These fungi require respect, intention, and proper context. They offer journeys, not just trips. The modern science of consciousness and fungi. Contemporary neuroscience is using psychedelic fungi as tools to understand consciousness itself. If consciousness emerges from specific patterns of brain activity, then substances that reliably alter those patterns can reveal how consciousness works. Psilocybin research has shown that the default mode network, previously thought essential for consciousness, can be dramatically reduced in activity while subjects remain conscious. Indeed, while they experience consciousness as expanded or enhanced. This challenges assumptions about which brain activities are necessary for subjective experience. Studies using fMRI and EEG during psilocybin experiences show that the brain becomes more interconnected globally while less organized locally. This resembles brain activity patterns in early childhood or during dreaming, states characterized by flexible, imaginative thinking rather than focused, analytical cognition. Some researchers propose that consciousness normally operates under constraints that filter and organize information, creating the stable, predictable experience of self and world. Psychedelics temporarily relax these constraints, allowing a more fluid, less filtered form of consciousness to emerge. This isn't better or worse, just different, and studying this difference reveals the mechanisms that normally construct everyday consciousness. Fungi, in this view, are neuroscience research tools, natural compounds that reliably alter specific brain systems, allowing researchers to map the neural basis of subjective experience. The mystery of how mushrooms affect the mind illuminates the deeper mystery of mind itself. The diversity of edible mushrooms. Humans have identified and cultivated thousands of edible mushroom species, each with unique flavors, textures, and nutritional profiles. The common button mushroom, Agaricus bisporus, is the most widely cultivated and consumed, but it's merely one note in a vast culinary symphony. Shiitake mushrooms from East Asia offer rich umami flavor and are now grown worldwide. Oyster mushrooms come in multiple colors: white, yellow, pink, blue, each with subtly different tastes and textures. Chanterelles, foraged rather than cultivated, bring apricot-like flavors and a meaty texture. Morels, with their distinctive honeycomb caps, are prized for their complex, earthy taste. Porcini mushrooms, called ceps in France and steinpilz in Germany, offer intense, almost meaty flavor that enhances soups and risottos. Each edible species contains different nutrients. Some are rich in B vitamins, others in vitamin D, especially when exposed to sunlight. Most provide fiber, protein, and various minerals. Some contain compounds with potential health benefits beyond basic nutrition. The diversity extends beyond taste and nutrition to growing requirements. Some mushrooms grow on logs, others on compost, still others only in association with specific trees. This diversity makes mushrooms endlessly interesting to cultivators, foragers, and chefs. The edible mushroom kingdom offers far more than most people ever taste. The common mushroom on our tables. The button mushroom, Agaricus bisporus, accounts for the vast majority of mushrooms eaten in Western countries. It's the same species at 3 different stages: white buttons when young, cremini when slightly mature and brown, and portobello when fully grown with an open cap. This humble mushroom has been cultivated for centuries, first in France in the 17th century, spreading worldwide as cultivation techniques improved. Today, button mushrooms grow in climate-controlled facilities on beds of composted agricultural waste, a sustainable use of materials that would otherwise be discarded. The mushrooms are low in calories, but provide protein, B vitamins, copper, and selenium. When exposed to UV light during or after growing, they produce vitamin D, becoming one of the few non-animal food sources of this important nutrient. The flavor is mild, earthy, versatile enough to work in countless dishes or be eaten raw. The texture when cooked releases water first, then concentrates, developing deeper flavor through caramelization. This mushroom's success comes from its ease of cultivation and broad appeal, but also from careful breeding that's selected for appearance, yield, and shelf life. The common mushroom is remarkable, not for novelty, but for being reliably available, nutritious, and accessible, a fungal staple that feeds millions daily without fanfare. The delicacy of truffles. Truffles grow underground in association with tree roots, never emerging into visibility. They're among the most expensive foods in the world, with rare white truffles selling for thousands of dollars per pound. The high price reflects their scarcity, the difficulty of finding them, and their intense, distinctive aroma. Truffles can't be conventionally cultivated. They require specific tree species, particular soil conditions, and climate they won't reveal through simple observation. Finding them requires trained dogs or pigs that can smell the truffles underground, sometimes buried a foot deep. The relationship between truffles and trees is mycorrhizal. The fungus provides minerals and water to the tree, while receiving sugars in return. Truffles evolved their powerful aroma to attract animals that would dig them up and eat them, dispersing spores through droppings. The aroma compounds include substances similar to mammalian pheromones, which might explain their powerful effect on human perception. Black truffles from Périgord, France, and white truffles from Piedmont, Italy, are most prized, but truffle species exist on multiple continents. The flavor is difficult to describe: earthy, musky, complex, with notes that vary between species. Used sparingly, shaved over pasta or eggs, truffles transform simple dishes into luxury. They represent the pinnacle of fungal gastronomy, mysterious organisms commanding extraordinary value simply for their scent and taste. The hidden art of foraging. Foraging for wild mushrooms is part skill, part art, part relationship with place. It requires learning to identify species reliably, understanding where and when different mushrooms fruit, and developing an eye for the subtle signs that reveal hidden fungi. Foragers learn to read landscapes. Chanterelles prefer mature forests with specific trees, Douglas fir in the Pacific Northwest, oak in the east. Mabrellos emerge in spring, often in disturbed ground or burned areas. Chicken of the woods, a bright orange shelf fungus, grows on specific oak and cherry trees. Successful foraging means learning your local ecology, understanding mycorrhizal relationships, and visiting the same productive spots year after year. But it's also about patience and acceptance. Some years are abundant, others scarce, depending on rainfall and temperature patterns. You might search all day and find nothing, or stumble upon pounds of mushrooms in one small area. Foraging connects people to place and season in ways modern life rarely requires. It's hunting without killing, gathering with respect for the organism and the ecosystem. Good foragers follow ethics. Never take all the mushrooms from one spot. Cut rather than pull to leave mycelium intact, and share knowledge carefully. The hidden art of foraging is disappearing in some places, being rediscovered in others, always passed person to person, forest to forest. The rules of safe mushroom hunting. Rule 1. Absolute certainty. Never eat a mushroom unless you're completely confident in its identification. Many edible species have toxic lookalikes, and the stakes are high. Some mushroom toxins have no antidote and can cause organ failure. Rule 2. Learn from experts. Books and online guides help, but learning from experienced foragers in your region is invaluable. Local knowledge matters because mushroom distribution varies by area. Rule 3. Start with easily identified species that lack dangerous lookalikes. Chicken of the woods, hen of the woods, and lion's mane are relatively safe starting points. Rule 4. When learning, use multiple identification features: cap shape, gill attachment, spore print color, stem characteristics, habitat, and season all matter. No single feature is enough. Rule 5. If in doubt, throw it out. No meal is worth the risk. Rule 6. Try small amounts first. Even edible mushrooms can cause reactions in some people. Cook mushrooms thoroughly. Many species are toxic raw, but safe cooked. Rule 7. Save a raw specimen. If you become ill after eating foraged mushrooms, a specimen helps doctors identify the toxin and provide appropriate treatment. These rules aren't meant to frighten, but to create safety around an activity that's both rewarding and potentially dangerous. Mushrooms offer abundance to those who learn their language carefully. The deadly beauty of poisonous fungi. Some of the most beautiful mushrooms are the most dangerous. The destroying angel, Amanita virosa, pure white and elegant, contains amatoxins that destroy liver and kidney cells. Symptoms appear only after the toxins have already done irreversible damage, making treatment difficult and often unsuccessful. The death cap, Amanita phalloides, is responsible for most fatal mushroom poisonings worldwide. It tastes pleasant, reportedly, which makes it more dangerous. The toxins survive cooking. Symptoms begin 8 to 12 hours after ingestion with gastrointestinal distress, then seem to improve for a day or two, while organs are quietly failing. By the time severe symptoms appear, liver transplant may be the only option. These mushrooms aren't evil. They're simply defending themselves with chemical compounds. The deadliness is accidental from our perspective, but from the mushroom's viewpoint, these toxins successfully deter most consumers. The beauty is also incidental. Evolution shaped these mushrooms for function, and the result happens to be aesthetically striking. Learning to recognize deadly mushrooms is as important as recognizing edible ones. Several deaths occur annually from foragers mistaking toxic species for edible ones, particularly immigrants who mistake local species for similar-looking edible species from their home countries. Deadly beauty in mushrooms is a reminder that not everything pleasing to the eye is safe to touch or consume. Nature doesn't label its dangers for us. The story of the death cap. The death cap mushroom, Amanita phalloides, is thought to have caused more deaths than any other mushroom species. Historical figures may have fallen to it. Roman Emperor Claudius possibly died from death cap poisoning, as might have Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI. The mushroom contains alpha-amanitin, a toxin that inhibits RNA polymerase the preventing cells from producing proteins. Without this function, cells die, particularly rapidly dividing cells in the liver and kidneys. The insidious aspect is the delayed symptom onset. You eat the mushroom, it tastes fine, and you feel normal for hours. Then gastrointestinal symptoms begin: nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. After a day or two, symptoms improve. This false recovery phase gives hope, but during this time, liver and kidney cells are dying. Eventually, organ failure symptoms appear, and by then, the damage is largely done. Treatment involves supportive care, medications to protect liver cells, and sometimes liver transplant. Survival depends on how much mushroom was consumed, how quickly treatment began, and individual factors. The death cap is particularly dangerous because it grows near oaks and can be mistaken for edible species, especially by those familiar with mushrooms from other regions. It's native to Europe, but has been introduced to other continents, possibly through imported trees. The death cap's story is a cautionary tale about respecting fungi, learning to identify species carefully, and recognizing that beauty and danger sometimes wear the same face. The most toxic mushrooms known. Beyond the death cap, several mushroom species contain toxins deadly even in small quantities. The fool's mushroom, Amanita verna, contains the same amatoxins as the death cap. Funeral bell, Gallerina marginata, small and easy to overlook, grows on decaying wood and contains amatoxins. It's sometimes mistaken for hallucinogenic species, with tragic results. The deadly webcap, Cortinarius rubellus, contains orelanin, which destroys kidney function. Symptoms can take days or weeks to appear, making the connection between mushroom consumption and illness sometimes difficult to establish. Fly agaric, Amanita muscaria, while rarely fatal, contains muscimol and ibotenic acid, causing severe poisoning with hallucinations, seizures, and coma in high doses. Some mushrooms, like Trogia venenata in China, were discovered only recently to be deadly poisonous, after causing multiple deaths in rural areas. The variety of toxins is remarkable. Some attack liver and kidneys, others disrupt the nervous system, still others cause cardiovascular failure or destroy blood cells. These toxins evolved as defenses, protecting mushrooms from consumption by insects, slugs, and mammals. They work. The most toxic mushrooms are generally avoided by animals that encounter them regularly, though occasional poisonings occur across species. For humans, Knowledge is the only defense. There's no rule like brightly colored mushrooms are poisonous and dull ones safe. Only specific identification protects against these beautiful killers. How fungi defend themselves. Fungi can't run from danger, but they defend themselves through sophisticated chemical warfare. Many mushrooms produce toxins that sicken or kill anything that eats them. Others produce compounds that simply taste terrible or cause minor discomfort, teaching predators to avoid them without killing. Some fungi produce antibiotics that inhibit bacteria, competing for the same resources. Others secrete compounds that suppress other fungi, clearing living space in crowded environments. These chemical defenses are diverse and species-specific. Some toxins attack the nervous system, others the digestive system or organs. Some defenses are active only in certain life stages or conditions. Beyond chemistry, fungi have structural defenses. Some mushrooms are simply too tough to eat, their tissue woody and fibrous. Others produce viscous slime that might deter slugs and insects. Some grow in locations difficult for many predators to access, high on trees, deep in rotting wood. Rapid growth is also defensive, fruiting quickly and releasing spores before predators find the mushroom improves reproductive success. Fungi also defend through sheer abundance, producing millions of spores or multiple fruiting bodies, ensures that even if most are eaten or destroyed, some survive. The defensive strategies of fungi remind us that survival doesn't require movement or intelligence. As we understand it, chemistry, structure, and abundance can be equally effective shields against the challenges of existence. The world of mold and spores. Not all fungi produce mushrooms. The molds growing on bread, fruit, and walls are fungi too, usually reproducing through simple spores rather than elaborate fruiting bodies. These molds are everywhere, their spores constantly drifting through air, landing on surfaces, waiting for suitable conditions to germinate. When they find moisture and organic matter, they grow rapidly, sending out hyphae that spread across and into the substrate. Some molds are beneficial. Penicillium species give us penicillin. Other penicillium species give us blue cheese and camembert, their mycelium creating the characteristic flavors and textures. Aspergillus oryzae is essential in making soy sauce, miso, and sake, but many molds damage food, buildings, and sometimes health. Black mold, Stachybotrys chartarum, growing in water-damaged buildings, produces mycotoxins that can cause respiratory problems. Aspergillus flavus, growing on improperly stored grains and nuts, produces aflatoxin, a potent carcinogen. The world of mold is mostly invisible until it's not. Then we notice the fuzzy growth and smell the musty odor of decay. Molds decompose and transform, just like mushroom-forming fungi, but they do it at smaller scales, in tighter spaces, working constantly at the boundaries between living and decaying. They're fungi we usually want to avoid, but they're still part of the kingdom, still essential to nature's recycling work, however unwelcome in our homes. The fungi that live on bread and fruit. The green or white fuzz appearing on forgotten bread is usually Penicillium or Rhizopus, common mold genera that thrive on starchy, sugary foods. These fungi reproduce rapidly, releasing spores that spread to other food if not contained. The visible mold is just the surface. Beneath, mycelium penetrates deep into the bread structure, though you can't see it. This is why cutting mold off bread doesn't make the rest safe to eat. The mycelium has likely spread throughout. Fruit molds include various species. The gray mold on strawberries is often Botrytis cinerea, a fungus that can also be deliberately cultivated on wine grapes to create sweet dessert wines. The same fungus, different context. Brown rot on stone fruits, white mold on citrus. Each represents fungal species specialized to exploit particular fruits. These molds are adapted to digest plant cell walls and the sugars fruits contain. They detect ripeness through chemical cues and grow most aggressively on the softest, sweetest fruits. From the fungus's perspective, a piece of bread or a ripe peach is a resource, food to consume and habitat to colonize. They're doing what fungi do, decomposing organic matter, breaking it down into simpler compounds, recycling nutrients. That we wanted to eat that bread is incidental. The fungi arrived first, and they're simply living their lives, quick and opportunistic, in the small ecosystems of our kitchens. The strange relationship between fungi and insects. Some fungi have evolved intimate, sometimes nightmarish relationships with insects. Leafcutter ants cultivate fungus gardens, bringing fresh-cut leaves to underground chambers where the fungus grows. The ants feed on specialized structures the fungus produces, essentially farming it. This mutualism benefits both. The fungus gets constant food and care. The ants get reliable nutrition. The fungus has become so dependent on the ants that it can no longer reproduce sexually, and the ants carry fungal cultures when new queens establish colonies. Other relationships are parasitic. Cordyceps fungi infect insects, growing inside their bodies, eventually killing them. Some cordyceps species manipulate host behavior before death, causing infected ants to climb to elevated positions and bite down on leaves or twigs. The fungus then fruits from the dead insect's body, positioning itself to spread spores over a wider area. Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, the zombie ant fungus, is particularly specific, infecting only certain ant species and causing remarkably precise behavioral changes. The fungus grows through the ant's body without immediately killing it, controlling behavior while keeping the host alive until reaching the optimal location for spore dispersal. These relationships reveal fungi as active participants in ecological communities, shaping insect behavior and populations, sometimes cooperating, sometimes parasitizing, always adapting to exploit available niches in endlessly creative ways. The zombie fungus that controls ants, Ophiocordyceps unilateralis, is nature's mind controller, a fungus that turns ants into vehicles for its reproduction. When spores land on an ant's body, they germinate and penetrate the exoskeleton. The fungus grows inside, spreading through the ant's tissues, but initially avoiding vital organs, keeping the host alive and functional. As the infection progresses, the fungus begins producing compounds that affect the ant's nervous system. The infected ant leaves its colony and climbs vegetation, usually to a position about 10 inches above the forest floor, the optimal height for spore dispersal in the understory. The ant then performs a behavior called the death grip, biting down on the underside of a leaf or twig with its mandibulas locked. It never lets go. The fungus then kills the ant and begins fruiting, sending a stalk through the back of the ant's head. This stalk produces spores that fall like rain onto the forest floor below, potentially infecting more ants. The specificity is remarkable. This fungus infects only certain ant species, and the behavioral manipulation is consistent across infections. Recent research suggests the fungus might not invade the brain directly, but control behavior by affecting muscles and through chemical signaling. How exactly it achieves such precise behavioral control remains partially mysterious, a testament to evolution's capacity for creating complex, specific solutions through millions of years of coevolution. The nature of parasitic fungi. Not all fungi decompose dead matter. Some parasitize living organisms. These parasitic fungi range from mildly harmful to devastating. Plant parasites include rusts and smuts that infect crops, causing billions of dollars in agricultural losses annually. Wheat rust alone has caused famines throughout history. Dutch elm disease, caused by fungi spread by bark beetles, has killed millions of elm trees across North America and Europe. Chestnut blight nearly eliminated American chestnuts from eastern forests. These fungi penetrate plant tissues, stealing nutrients and disrupting normal function. Animal parasitic fungi include species that cause ringworm, athlete's foot, and more serious systemic infections, particularly in immunocompromised individuals. Some parasitic fungi are specialists, infecting only specific hosts. Others are generalists, opportunistically infecting various species. The parasitic lifestyle requires different strategies than decomposition. The fungus must keep the host alive long enough to extract nutrients and reproduce, a balance between exploitation and host survival. Some parasites manipulate host behavior to increase transmission, like the zombie ant fungus. Others simply drain resources gradually. From the fungus's perspective, living tissue is just another ecological niche, another resource to exploit. That we consider them parasites reflects our sympathy for hosts, but in nature, parasitism is neither good nor evil, just another strategy for survival, successful because it works. Fungi that infect plants and animals. The fungal kingdom includes thousands of species that infect living plants and animals, causing diseases ranging from superficial to fatal. In plants, fungal diseases affect every part: roots, stems, leaves, flowers, and fruits. Powdery mildews coat leaves with white fungal growth, reducing photosynthesis. Downy mildews cause spots and wilting. Root rots attack underground, often killing plants before symptoms appear above ground. Vascular wilts invade the water-conducting tissues, blocking them and causing plants to wilt despite adequate water. These plant pathogens spread through spores carried by wind, water, or insects. In animals, fungal infections mostly affect external surfaces: skin, nails, respiratory passages. Dermatophytes cause athlete's foot, ringworm, and other skin conditions by digesting keratin. Yeast infections, usually Candida species, affect mucous membranes. More serious fungal infections, like aspergillosis or cryptococcosis, can invade lungs or even spread systemically, particularly dangerous for people with weakened immune systems. Animals and plants have immune responses to fight fungal infections, but fungi evolved to evade these defenses. The ongoing evolutionary arms race drives diversity on both sides. Fungi that successfully infect hosts produce spores that spread to new hosts, continuing the cycle. Understanding these diseases has become crucial, as some fungal plant pathogens threaten food security, and fungal infections in humans are increasingly resistant to treatment. The cordyceps and its host. Cordyceps is actually a genus containing hundreds of species, each typically specialized to infect specific insect or arthropod hosts. Some infect caterpillars, others beetles, spiders, or true bugs. The most famous might be Ophiocordyceps sinensis, which infects ghost moth caterpillars in the Himalayas and has been used in traditional Chinese medicine for centuries, now selling for extraordinary prices due to scarcity. The infection process is similar across cordyceps species. Spores contact the host, germinate, penetrate the body, and gradually consume the host from inside. The fungus feeds on non-vital tissues first, keeping the host alive as long as possible. When ready to reproduce, the fungus kills the host and fruits, sending stalks out through the body, usually from the head or thorax. These stalks produce spores that spread to infect new hosts. The specificity suggests deep coevolution. Each cordyceps species has adapted to its particular host's biology, chemistry, and behavior. The fungus must overcome the host's immune system, time its growth to maximize its own reproductive success, and sometimes manipulate behavior to position the corpse optimally for spore dispersal. The relationship is lethal, but sophisticated, honed by countless generations of evolutionary refinement. Cordyceps represents one of nature's most striking examples of parasitism as a complex, precisely adapted lifestyle. The adaptation and evolution of fungi. Fungi have been adapting and evolving for roughly 1 billion years, diversifying into forms that fill nearly every ecological niche. Their adaptations are remarkable. Some fungi tolerate extreme cold, growing in Arctic and Antarctic environments. Others thrive in deserts, activating only during rare rains. Some grow in acidic mine drainage or heavily polluted industrial sites, breaking down compounds other organisms can't touch. Deep-sea fungi live in lightless, high-pressure environments. Thermophilic fungi grow in compost heaps, where temperatures reach 160 degrees Fahrenheit. This adaptability comes from fungi's flexible metabolism and structure. They can switch between sexual and asexual reproduction, depending on conditions. They can enter dormancy, surviving years without favorable conditions. Their modular growth pattern means losing part of the mycelium doesn't kill the organism. Evolutionary innovations include the development of lignin-degrading enzymes, which allowed fungi to decompose wood, and may have played a role in ending the Carboniferous period, when massive carbon sequestration occurred because decomposers couldn't break down the woody plants that accumulated. The evolution of mycorrhizal relationships enabled plant colonization of land. The development of fruiting bodies that elevate spore release improved dispersal. Fungi continue evolving, adapting to human-created environments, developing resistance to fungicides, and finding new niches in the Anthropocene. Evolution hasn't stopped. We're witnessing it in real time. The fungal footprints in ancient fossils. The fossil record of fungi is fragmentary. Soft tissues rarely fossilize well, but enough evidence exists to trace their ancient history. The oldest potential fungal fossils date back roughly 1 billion years, though these early records are debated. More definitive fossils appear around 450 million years ago, showing fungi already diverse and complex. Fossil mycorrhizae, preserved in the Rhynie Chert, a Scottish rock formation about 410 million years old, show fungi intimately associated with early land plant roots, suggesting this partnership is ancient. These fossils capture a moment when plants were just colonizing land, and fungi were already there helping them. Fossil fungi show up preserved in amber, in mineralized wood, and in trace fossils, signs of fungal activity if not the fungi themselves. Some fungal structures, particularly spores and resistant cell walls, fossilize more readily than soft mycelium. The fossil record suggests fungi diversified alongside plants, with major evolutionary radiations corresponding to plant evolution milestones. Fossils show extinct fungal forms, unlike anything alive today, reminding us that the current fungal kingdom represents just the latest iteration in a billion-year history. The footprints fungi left in stone tell of deep time, of partnerships that enabled forests to exist, of adaptations to changing climates and competitors. The ancient fossils connect today's mushrooms to an unimaginably long lineage. How mushrooms help plants grow. The relationship between fungi and plants is so fundamental that most terrestrial plants literally couldn't survive without fungal partners. Mycorrhizal fungi extend root systems, vastly increasing the surface area through which plants absorb water and nutrients. A single root tip might connect to miles of fungal hyphae, accessing soil spaces roots alone could never reach. The fungi are particularly efficient at gathering phosphorus, often the limiting nutrient in soil, and transferring it to plants. They also provide nitrogen, trace minerals in water, particularly during drought, when plants' own roots struggle. In exchange, plants provide fungi with carbon in the form of sugars from photosynthesis. This carbon fuels fungal growth and reproduction. But the benefit extends beyond nutrition. Mycorrhizal fungi improve soil structure, secreting compounds that bind soil particles together, reducing erosion and increasing water retention. They protect plants from certain pathogens, either through physical barrier or by producing antimicrobial compounds. They can even transfer nutrients between different plant species, essentially creating a commons where resources are shared. Plants grown without their mycorrhizal partners show stunted growth, reduced resilience to stress, and increased susceptibility to disease. Modern agriculture often disrupts these relationships through tilling and fungicide application, requiring increased fertilizer inputs to replace the functions fungi naturally provide. Regenerative agriculture increasingly focuses on rebuilding mycorrhizal networks, recognizing that helping mushrooms means helping plants grow. The symbiosis that sustains forests, forest ecosystems, depend on mycorrhizal symbiosis in ways we're only beginning to understand fully. In old-growth forests, fungal networks connect virtually all trees, creating what ecologist Suzanne Simard calls the mother tree phenomenon. Large, established trees serve as hubs in the network, supporting younger trees through fungal connections, sharing carbon particularly with their own offspring. This cooperation contradicts the competitive view of forest ecology. Trees in healthy forests aren't just competing for light, water, and nutrients. They're also cooperating, sharing resources through fungal intermediaries. The network provides resilience. When one tree has excess carbon, it can share through fungal networks. When that tree later experiences stress, shading, drought, or damage, it might receive resources from neighbors. This reciprocity over time benefits the forest as a community. The fungi also benefit from maintaining multiple host connections. If one tree dies, the fungal network persists through other connections. The symbiosis creates stability, allowing forests to withstand disturbances that might otherwise cause cascading failures. When forests are clear-cut or severely disturbed, these fungal networks are destroyed. Replanting trees in degraded soil without the fungal communities means the new forest lacks the underground architecture that made the original forest resilient. True forest restoration requires restoring fungi, not just trees. The symbiosis literally sustains forests, underground connections supporting the visible world above. The role of fungi in soil health. Healthy soil is alive with fungi. Their mycelial networks bind soil particles together, creating aggregate structure that resists erosion, holds water, and allows air circulation. This structure is essential for both plant health and preventing soil loss. Fungal decomposition releases nutrients locked in organic matter, making them available for plant uptake. Fungal break down complex molecules, lignin, cellulose, chitin, that many other organisms can't digest, ensuring complete nutrient cycling. The byproducts of fungal decomposition become humus, the dark, rich component of healthy soil that holds nutrients and water, while maintaining light, friable texture. Mycorrhizal fungi create living connections between soil, fungal, and plants, facilitating nutrient and water exchange. Some fungi produce glomalin, a sticky protein that helps bind soil aggregates and may be a significant carbon storage compound. Soil fungi also suppress plant diseases through competition and antibiotic production. They compete with pathogenic organisms for resources and space, and some produce compounds that inhibit pathogens. Degraded soils often lack fungal diversity and abundance. Restoration efforts increasingly include fungal inoculation, adding spores or mycelium to re-establish fungal communities. The health of soil and the health of fungal communities are inseparable. When we protect soil fungi, we protect the foundation of terrestrial ecosystems, the living matrix that makes plant life possible. How mycelium cleans pollution. Fungi possess remarkable abilities to break down toxic compounds, a process called mycore mediation. Certain fungi can metabolize petroleum products, breaking down oil spills into simpler, less harmful compounds. Oyster mushrooms have been used experimentally to clean diesel-contaminated soil. Other fungi break down pesticides, herbicides, and industrial chemicals. White rot fungi, which evolved enzymes to break down lignin in wood, can also break down structurally similar pollutants, including PCBs, dioxins, and certain plastics. The mechanism involves extracellular enzymes, peroxidases, and lacases that fungi secrete into their environment. These enzymes break chemical bonds in complex molecules, beginning the breakdown process. The fungi then absorb and metabolize the simpler compounds, or leave them in forms other organisms can further process. Some fungi can absorb heavy metals from soil, concentrating them in fruiting bodies. These mushrooms shouldn't be eaten. but they remove toxins from the environment, and the contaminated mushrooms can be safely disposed of. My core mediation has been used in oil spills, industrial sites, agricultural land contaminated with pesticides, and areas with heavy metal pollution. The process is slower than some chemical remediation methods, but often more complete, less disruptive to ecosystems, and significantly cheaper. Mycelium cleans pollution by doing what it does naturally, breaking down complex organic molecules only directed toward human-made compounds. The same enzymes that digest a dead tree can digest toxic waste, turning contamination back into harmless components. The use of fungi in environmental recovery. Beyond my core mediation, fungi play crucial roles in ecological restoration. When ecosystems are degraded, forests cleared, mines abandoned, soil eroded, re-establishing fungal communities often determines whether recovery succeeds. In forest restoration, inoculating soil or tree seedlings with appropriate mycorrhizal fungi dramatically improves survival and growth rates. Degraded soil often lacks the fungal diversity that once existed, and introducing fungi helps rebuild the below-ground ecosystem. In mine reclamation, fungi help create soil structure in barren, compacted ground and can tolerate the extreme conditions often present in mining sites. Some fungi stabilize slopes, their mycelium literally holding soil together while plants establish. In wetland restoration, fungi contribute to decomposition and nutrient cycling essential for ecosystem function. After disasters like oil spills or industrial contamination, my core mediation offers a biological cleanup approach. Even in urban environments, fungi help remediate brownfield sites, abandoned industrial properties, too contaminated for reuse. The fungi do the work we can't do efficiently any other way, breaking down toxins, building soil, and creating conditions where other life can return. Using fungi in environmental recovery acknowledges that ecosystems aren't just collections of visible organisms, but complex communities, including essential underground members. Restoration that ignores fungi often fails. Restoration that includes fungi rebuilds from the ground up, literally. The future of mycelium materials. Mycelium isn't just for forests, it's becoming a manufacturing material. Companies are growing mycelium on agricultural waste, creating materials that can replace plastics, leather, and styrofoam. The process involves feeding mycelium with material like sawdust, hemp fiber, or agricultural byproducts and molds. The mycelium grows through the substrate, binding it together with its network of hyphae. After a week or two, the material is dried or heated, stopping growth and creating a solid material. The result is lightweight, strong, biodegradable, and can be grown into specific shapes. Mycelium packaging replaces foam cushioning in shipping, offering the same protection while being compostable. Mycelium leather alternatives are being developed for fashion and upholstery, grown in sheets and textured to resemble animal leather. Mycelium building materials could replace foam insulation or particle board. Some architects envision growing structures, pavilions, furniture, even architectural components from mycelium composites. The advantages are significant. Low energy inputs, uses waste materials as feedstock, grows quickly, biodegrades completely. The challenges include scaling production, achieving consistent material properties, and cost competitiveness. But the future of mycelium materials seems promising. We're learning to grow what we need rather than synthesizing it from petroleum. Fungi, which have always been nature's material recyclers, might become our material manufacturers, creating a more sustainable relationship between human needs and fungal biology. Fungi as the architects of the future. As humanity grapples with sustainability challenges, fungi offer solutions. They could help us grow buildings instead of constructing them, reducing the enormous carbon footprint of concrete and steel. Mycelium composites could replace petroleum-based plastics, which persist in the environment for centuries. with materials that decompose within weeks after use. Fungi could clean our pollution, remediating contaminated sites through natural processes. They could strengthen our agriculture, reducing reliance on synthetic fertilizers and pesticides by supporting plant health through mycorrhizal networks. They could provide sustainable protein and nutrition as food sources that require minimal land, water, and energy compared to animal agriculture. Some researchers explore using fungi to create batteries and electronic components, growing conductive materials biologically. Others investigate fungal enzymes for breaking down plastic waste or synthesizing pharmaceutical compounds. The common thread is working with fungal biology rather than against it, recognizing that millions of years of evolution have created capabilities we can harness rather than replace. Fungi, as architects of the future, means designing systems where fungal growth creates what we need while supporting rather than degrading ecosystems. It means understanding that the kingdom we've often ignored or dismissed might hold keys to sustainable living. The future fungi might help build is one where human civilization operates more like a forest, interconnected, cycling resources, building complexity through cooperation rather than extraction. The potential of mushroom-based packaging. Every year, billions of tons of packaging materials, mostly plastic and styrofoam, are produced, used briefly, and discarded into landfills or oceans where they persist for centuries. Mycelium packaging offers an alternative. Companies like Ecovative have developed processes for growing packaging materials from mycelium in just days. Agricultural waste provides the substrate, corn cobs, hemp fiber, sawdust. Mycelium is introduced and grows through the substrate in molds shaped for specific products. The result protects products as well as styrofoam, but decomposes quickly after disposal, even in home compost. The material is naturally fire-resistant, water-resistant enough for most applications, and uses no synthetic chemicals. The carbon footprint is minimal. Production requires little energy, and the material actually sequesters carbon during growth. Major companies have begun using mycelium packaging, replacing petroleum-based options. The challenge is scaling production to meet global packaging demand and achieving price parity with established materials subsidized by existing infrastructure. But the potential is clear. We could grow packaging instead of manufacturing it, use waste as raw material instead of virgin resources, and dispose of it by composting instead of accumulating it in landfills. Mushroom-based packaging represents a shift from linear thinking, extract, make, dispose, to circular thinking, grow, use, compost, grow again. It's a small example of a larger possibility, redesigning human systems to mimic natural cycles where waste doesn't exist because everything feeds something else. The growing field of fungal research. Mycology, the study of fungi, is experiencing a renaissance. For decades, fungi received less attention than plants and animals, treated as a minor kingdom of molds and mushrooms. But recent research reveals fungi's crucial ecological roles, their vast diversity, and their potential applications. Scientists are cataloging fungal species worldwide, discovering that previous estimates drastically undercounted diversity. Genetic sequencing allows identification of fungi that don't produce visible fruiting bodies, revealing hidden diversity in soil, water, and even air. Researchers are mapping mycorrhizal networks in forests, demonstrating how these underground connections structure entire ecosystems. They're studying fungal biochemistry, isolating compounds with pharmaceutical potential. They're investigating how fungi could address climate change through carbon sequestration in soil, through mycelium materials replacing carbon-intensive products, through mycorrhizal cleaning pollution. They're exploring fungal intelligence, how decentralized networks make decisions, solve problems, and adapt to changing conditions, potentially inspiring new computational approaches. Citizen scientists contribute by documenting mushrooms, expanding our knowledge of distribution and phenology. Mycology today sits at intersections of ecology, biochemistry, material science, medicine, agriculture, and even philosophy. The growing field of fungal research reveals that the more we learn about fungi, the more we realize how fundamental they are to life on Earth and how much potential they hold for addressing human challenges. The kingdom we ignored is becoming the kingdom we study intensely. The global network beneath the surface. Beneath every continent, fungal networks weave through soil, connecting forests, grasslands, and even deserts during brief wet periods. This global network isn't continuous. Fungi don't span oceans, but it's vast and interconnected in ways we're only beginning to map. In a single forest, mycelial networks of multiple species overlap and interact, creating complexity that rivals above-ground ecosystems. Some networks span entire mountainsides. The Oregon honey fungus covers thousands of acres. Multiply such examples across the world's forests, grasslands, and soils, and you glimpse the scale of fungal presence on Earth. This network isn't just physical, it's functional. Nutrients flow through it, carbon moves between trees, chemical signals pass along hyphae, warning of threats or announcing resources. The network connects individual organisms into communities, creating interdependence that strengthens ecosystems. It operates continuously, mostly invisibly, breaking down the dead, feeding the living, and creating the conditions for new life. The global network beneath the surface is one of Earth's great systems, comparable to ocean currents or atmospheric circulation, but operating through living cells, chemical conversations, and ancient partnerships. Walking on soil, you're walking above this network. Every footstep rests on miles of mycelium, a living infrastructure that makes terrestrial life possible. The network has always been here, quiet and essential, waiting for us to notice. The connection between all living things. Fungi remind us that life isn't a collection of isolated organisms, but a web of connections. The mycelial networks linking trees demonstrate this literally. Individual trees are nodes in a larger network, sharing resources and information through fungal intermediaries. But the connection extends beyond forests. Fungi link living plants to dead organic matter, cycling nutrients from death back to life. They connect soil to atmosphere through decomposition that releases carbon dioxide. They connect past to future, breaking down yesterday's life to feed tomorrow's. Some philosophers and scientists see the mycelial network as a metaphor or even a model for understanding ecological interdependence more broadly. The network operates without central control, yet achieves coordinated outcomes. It balances competition and cooperation. It adapts to local conditions while maintaining global patterns. These properties might describe not just fungi, but complex systems generally, ecosystems, economies, even consciousness. Fungi teach that boundaries between individuals are more permeable than we assume. Where does one fungal individual end and another begin when their hyphae fuse? Where does the fungus end and the tree begin when they're sharing carbon and minerals? The connection between all living things is most visible in fungi, but they suggest that all life exists in relationship, that independence is largely illusion, and that we're all nodes in networks we're still learning to perceive. How fungi remind us of balance. Fungi exist at balance points, between life and death, between competition and cooperation, between individual and network. They remind us that these aren't opposites, but complementary aspects of existence. Fungi decompose death into nutrients for life. They compete with other decomposers while cooperating with living plants. Individual mycelial networks maintain identity while connecting into larger webs. This balance is dynamic, constantly adjusting to conditions. When resources are abundant, fungi grow aggressively. When resources are scarce, they wait patiently. They fruit when conditions favor reproduction, remain dormant. Otherwise, they fight pathogens, but also form partnerships. They take what they need, but also give back through decomposition and symbiosis. Observing fungi can teach lessons about sustainability and adaptation. They've persisted for a billion years by being flexible, by cycling resources completely, by never depleting their substrate entirely, keeping the system alive that keeps them alive. Modern human civilization often operates differently, extracting without cycling, growing without patience, prioritizing short-term gains over long-term sustainability. Fungi suggest an alternative, that lasting success comes from balance, from closing loops, from recognizing that your well-being depends on your substrate's well-being. The mushroom that consumes an entire log quickly starves when the log is gone. The fungus that manages decomposition to match new input persists indefinitely. The lesson applies beyond fungi. The endless mystery of the mycelial world. Despite increasing research, fungi remain deeply mysterious. We don't fully understand how mycelial networks coordinate behavior without centralized control. We don't know how many species exist. Estimates range from 2 to 4 million, with fewer than 10% described. We don't completely understand mycorrhizal communication between trees. We don't know the full extent of fungal influence on climate, carbon cycling, or ecosystem stability. We've barely begun exploring fungal biochemistry. Most species have never been analyzed for pharmaceutical compounds. We don't understand the limits of mycorremediation, or which fungi might break down emerging pollutants like microplastics. We don't know if fungal networks possess something that might be called collective intelligence or computation. Each answered question reveals new questions. Each discovered species might contain unique compounds, ecological relationships, or evolutionary innovations. The mycelial world operates largely beneath notice, in darkness and soil, in scales too large and too small for easy observation. Even common mushrooms in your local forest might be species unknown to science. The mystery isn't just about what we don't know. It's about the humility of recognizing how much remains to learn about a kingdom we've lived alongside throughout human history, yet barely understand. The endless mystery invites exploration, patience, and wonder. The recognition that some of Earth's most important citizens are also its least known. The kingdom that never sleeps. The fungal kingdom operates continuously, without pause or rest. While you sleep, mycelium grows through soil, extending hyphae in search of nutrients. Enzymes break down organic matter around the clock. Mycorrhizal exchanges shuttle carbon and minerals between fungi and plants. Ceaselessly, spores drift on midnight winds. Mushrooms emerge in darkness and release their spores regardless of human attention. The work of decomposition, the partnerships that feed forests, the networks that connect ecosystems, all continue independently of our awareness or participation. Fungi don't require our observation to exist or our understanding to function. They've been doing their work since long before humans appeared, and will continue long after we're gone. This persistence, this patient industry, defines the kingdom. Fungi are the workers that never rest, the network that never shuts down, the recyclers operating in eternal shifts. When we sleep, the fungal kingdom remains active, breaking down fallen leaves, shuttling nutrients, responding to chemical signals, growing toward food, avoiding toxins, reproducing when conditions allow. The kingdom that never sleeps sustains the kingdoms that do, making possible the rest, growth, and rebirth of all terrestrial life. In their ceaseless activity, fungi remind us that life continues in darkness and silence, that essential work happens unseen, and that the foundations of the world we notice rest on organisms we usually don't. Good night, and may your dreams be as patient and persistent as mycelium.